Shalom, my name is Michael Melchior. I'm a rabbi and educator here in Yerushalayim. I'm doing 18 questions, 40 Israeli thinkers for 1840.
So we'll begin where we always do. As an Israeli and as a Jew, how are you feeling at this moment in Israeli history?
I feel that in many ways we're at crossroads. There are many possibilities which have opened with the deep tragedies we've gone through. There's a lot of tears. The question is if we use the tears to go deeper into tragedies and deepen the internal and external controversies, or if we use the tears to become living waters and a hope for a future. So we're in many ways at a crossroad today in the history, in our history, both in the State of Israel and for the Jewish people.
How do you feel those tears are being used?
Well, as I said, we're at a crossroads, so we can use them in both directions. There are those who are pulling us further apart, and there are those who are bringing us together, and it's very much up to us how we use it, and this is the task God is giving us, to use things in the right way. This is the main task of I think, our generation and our time. The question is if we will use them as a Kiddush Hashem, as a sanctifying God's name. We're now in the Erev Chanukah. Today we're doing this interview. Will we make God's name great in the world, or will we desecrate God's name in the world? That's really the question, which is the central question which every Jew should ask him or herself.
What do you mean by that? What would that look like in the current situation that Israel's in?
What I mean is, will we deepen the internal conflict? Will we tear each other apart?
You're saying in Israeli society?
Inside the Israeli society, inside world Jewry, which will be a big Chilul Hashem in the world, a big desecration of God's name in the world, and also this is also externally. Everything comes out externally. Also, when we also internally, there's also parts of the story of goes back to the story we're reading now in these week's portions, when finally Joseph and the brothers, they made peace with each other. Then the word was heard in all of Egypt to Pharaoh, and everybody heard it. Everybody heard how they were embracing each other. So when we can embrace each other, when we can find internal peace, not internal peace always on our terms, right? That's everybody wants internal peace, but real, true, genuine internal peace. When we really can find that, and when we can find external peace also, when we can do Kiddush Hashem Ba'olam, with really showing compassion also for every human being. God has compassion for every human being, and when we can show that we not only know how to win wars, but we also know how to make peace, that there's time for war and there's time for peace, that we can know how to do that in a serious way, and how to, from a point of view of strength, to stretch out our hands also to our neighbors and to say, Now is the time that we should, with security, taking care of all issues of security for the future of our children and our grandchildren, also say that we care also for the future of the children of our neighbors. If we can do that, that will be a great Kiddush Hashem in the world. And that is, for that we live, for that the state of Israel has come to be. And that is the main purpose when we say every day, V'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha, you should love the Lord your God. When we say that every morning and that every evening, that we should sanctify God's name by doing Kiddush Hashem in the world, and not, God forbid, that everybody should talk bad about the Jewish people.
What do you think has been Israel's greatest success and greatest mistake in the current war against Hamas?
Well, it's always, this kind of question is difficult to answer. I think that the success was from the beginning that we all could stand together, that we had 120% of our people found that it was necessity to fight together because of the atrocities of the 7th of October, of that Black Shabbat, Simchat Torah, and we could stand together and fight together, shoulder to shoulder. I think that the failure has been that we haven't been able to find an alternative, how to end the war, how to release the hostages, that compassion, even to show also compassion to those innocent who have been killed also on the other side, even to not only to express it in words, but really to feel it, that's a failure, and not to just to say that we are wanting to end the rule of Hamas in Gaza is not sufficient. That is, you have to do something about it, and there are those who do want to take over the rule of Gaza, and Hamas does not want to continue the rule in Gaza. So why don't we do it? And that we don't do, of all kinds of different reasons. That's already going into political talk, but you need to be able to, just as you start a war, you need to be able to also to finish the war, and you need to be able to look forward, to take care that this is the end of wars, because we can't have a new war then starting in another half year, another year, to look towards to more comprehensive solutions. And this kind of thinking, of strategic, long-term thinking, we just don't have, not the political leadership, not on the right, not on the left, not our commentators. Nobody thinks in those terms.
So I have two questions for you on that. In November of 2023, about a month after October 7th, I forget which paper it was, but you spoke to them about, you gave a quote to them about the need to, what it seemed to be at least, the need to end the war and the need for a sensitivity towards civilian casualties and whatnot. For many people, that's been something that they came to, an opinion they came to over the last 15 months. I'm curious how the last 15 months have been for you, given that it seems as if that was a perspective you held much earlier after October 7th.
Yes, because I know a little bit more than what is in the public eye, and also more than what most cabinet ministers and others know about what is going on the other side, because of my relationship also with the Muslim world, and therefore I know that it was possible to, at a very early stage, to release the hostages and to get much better solutions than those we got to. And in this way, we've been involved in many ways in saving thousands of lives also during this past year. And I think that there are things which should be highlighted, which are not usually highlighted.
Such as what?
For example, what happened October 7th inside Israel, and by far and large, I include in that also what happened in East Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria, with many parties who, when Sinwar called upon the Arab Israelis to join the battle and thought it would be something like what happened in May 21, when we got a little taste of what could happen, and the Muslims went out very strongly and unanimously, went out totally, and these are in many ways our partners in the peace work, and they went to all the mosques and they said, no, this is not Islam. What you did is against Islam, and therefore we're not joining forces with you. And this is a desecration, what they call in their language also a desecration of God's name. And this story is not told in the Jewish world, how they called me and my colleagues those days, and also later when things happened, difficult things for them, also innocent people who were arrested and so on, and afterwards released after months being in prisons.
You're referring to in the aftermath of October 7th.
In the aftermath, when many people were arrested just
many
to be on the
Arabs in Israel were arrested.
Yes, and they said, they called and said, don't abandon us. We're in this. We're in this for the long run to have peace. We really want to have peace. And in spite of the way we're being treated, we're in this to have peace, and we're willing to risk a lot.
Do you feel like they have been abandoned?
Well, they asked us not to abandon them, and we're not abandoning them. We're not doing that, and I feel that there's a very important message that if you build coalitions, also with those who are considered sometimes to be extreme on both sides, I think that those are the important coalitions to make. Not to make coalitions necessarily with those who are the usual peacemakers, the secular left-wing, because they can always agree with each other, but they don't make any change. You need to speak to, when it comes to, on the Jewish side, you need to speak to the right-wing religious leaders, and in the Muslim side, you need to speak with the right-wing Islamic leaders, and that is where the change needs to happen, and where it is happening, but it's happening quietly under the radar, and things are happening under the radar since October 7th, which couldn't have happened before the 7th of October. People are talking, people are moving in their opinions, people are willing to take risks, and...
Are these people with actual political power or power to make
yes,
change?
people with power, people with influence, which very often are not the people the people who can move things, people who have influence in much more than politicians have. But they also have influence with the politicians. So this is very important, as well as it's important to work on the educational field inside, and also those efforts have intensified since October 7th. That you can have schools and educational institutions and communities where very, very religious and very, very heretic kids can study together, and not in order to convert each other, but in order to intensify the unity inside the people. And we have more calls for schools and for communities in the north and in the south and around Gaza and everywhere since October 7th than we've had ever before. We don't have time to do public relations because so many are just calling us to start new schools and kindergartens and high schools and mechinot and which are post-school institutes and batei midrash and it's changing the country. It's a thirst. You don't have to invent the wheel and to sit in round tables. How do we make unity? It's already being done. It's happening.
We're going to come back more to specifics about the future for Gaza and the Palestinians and Israel and peace. But I'm curious also, how have your religious views changed since October 7th?
I don't think that the religious views have changed. I think that they've become more insensitive.
So which types of views?
Prayers, more insensitive.
Your prayers become more intensive since October 7th?
Yes, I feel they've become more insensitive. But I don't think the religious views have changed.
Well, I meant your religious views, not necessarily the public's.
Yeah, my religion. I'm talking about my religious views. Yes.
Can you share a little bit more about the intensification of your prayers?
Well, you notice. One of our problems in the prayers is that our prayers have become so long that we always add more and more and more in our prayers that you don't have time to think when you pray. And sometimes since October 7th, I give more time to stop and think about single prayers, about single verses, and then it's a problem sometimes when you're a rabbi of the community, everybody's waiting, you have to finish in time, so people are waiting for you, so you can't...
Gives them more time to think about their own prayers.
You can't think too much, but a little, you can be allowed to think a little here, a little there.
Is there a particular prayer that you often come to as an anchor?
No, it's different ideas, different things.
Can I ask what today's was?
When we say Tov Hashem lakol v'rachamav al kol ma'asav.
God is good to all, and His mercies on all of His.
All His creatures. Poteach et yadecha u'maspia lechol chai ratzon. Just to take from Ashrei, from the prayer of Ashrei, which we say, but it can be, we also now this week have been new Shiva visits for soldiers who have fallen. I had this week I had it was a chilling experience. I was studying a tshuva about conversions to Judaism, because I'm also working as the head of Bet Din, which does conversions. There was a big conflict in Denmark, where I was born in Denmark. There was a big conflict about conversions to Judaism in the beginning of the 20th century. That was a time when there were, the first time there were mixed marriages, when people didn't marry mixed marriages in order to marry out of Judaism, but because they were integrated in society, but they wanted still to be Jewish, and they wanted their children to be Jewish. And they had a very orthodox chief rabbi who had a lifetime contract, and they demanded, the leadership of the community demanded of this rabbi, Rabbi Tuvia Levenstein, they demanded that he should convert all the children when they were 14 years old. And he didn't want to convert them. They didn't keep, there was no chance of them keeping not Shabbat, not Kashrut, not even having at that time any Jewish education. They were finished with a Jewish school, if those who went to a Jewish school. And he didn't want them, he didn't want to convert them, but he thought for the peace of the community and to make this, that he would convert those who had been in the past. And he wrote to 3 rabbis in Europe, 3 great authorities in Europe, and we studied. I studied with my chavruta the tshuva of one of these authorities of Europe, who was Rav Diner of Amsterdam. And exactly, we were reading that tshuva of Rav Diner of Amsterdam, who didn't permit doing that conversion, by the way, but 3 others did, so he permitted it. And at the same time, I got in the message from Dover Tzahal, from the spokesman of the army, that the son of his great-grandson had been killed in Gaza. It was chilling, That's this connection. You read his tshuva, and the son of his great-grandson, 20-year-old wonderful boy, just been married, that he was killed in Gaza. Well, this is how sometimes things are tied together. I heard his grandfather's hesped. Yes. Yesterday. There's a bridge in Amsterdam. That Amsterdam has bridges. There's a bridge in his name of this great rabbi. Wow. Yeah. I'm just telling you, things are often, things come together, all the different worlds.
Each other, absolutely.
In such chilling ways.
On the political front, and in the more political side of Israeli society, what do you look for in deciding which Knesset party to vote for?
Well, I'll look for the party which most can answer my the things, the ideals I believe in, the values I believe in.
Such as? Which, and I know it's also a funny question, given that you've been in Knesset in the past.
Yeah, well, I couldn't find any party which really satisfied my request, so we had to make our own party, a small, exclusive, nice party, which was created by my great teacher, Rav Yehuda Amital, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, blessed memory, but who was the head of the biggest Hesder Yeshiva in Gush Etzion. But that was doing something which I could be fully, which I could feel that this was something I could fully identify with. Now you have to compromise. You have to find what is closest. So what is closest to your values?
Yeah. So what are the some examples of the values? I know that no party, and you don't have to say which party you do or don't vote for, but what are the values that you look for, or you try to hope that a party would have?
Well, values which, first of all, they have to have values, and not only interests. To show that you have values of that. First of all, that they respect the religious values, and respect the human values, respect what we talk about here also, the internal peace, external peace, and work to sanctify God's name in the world.
Which is more important for Israel, Judaism or democracy?
That is like asking which of your children are more important. We read that Yaakov, our great father, he preferred one of his children, and no good came out of that. He shouldn't have done that.
So can you tell me a little bit more about why
the Talmud says that was what led to the exile in Mitzrayim. And so
why do you view Judaism?
You shouldn't prefer any child from the other.
Why do you view
Israel has
to
be our party? Meimad was Medina Yehudit, Medina Demokratit. It has to be Jewish. Depends also what Jewish means. Jewish can be.
Yeah, you tell me.
It can be misused in every way and sense. As well as democracy can be misused in every way and sense. It has to be fully Jewish and has to be fully democratic. One of the good examples of that is the Declaration of Independence. Rav Amital said that the Declaration of Independence was a holy document which has halachic we're obliged to it halachically, because this is a contract which was done both with all citizens of the state of Israel and towards the whole world. So when we breach the Declaration of Independence, for example, by making discriminatory laws towards the Arab citizens of the State of Israel or any other citizens of the State of Israel, we're breaching the Declaration of Independence. That's a halachic breach, because when you make a treaty, you can't breach it halachically. So it's like the treaty which we did with if you remember your Bible history, which not necessarily, I'm sure you remember, but not necessarily everybody who listens to this podcast remembers. But when Joshua went into the land and had to fight all the tribes here, the Canaanite tribes, the 7 peoples, there was one people who came to him. They cheated him. It was the Givonim. They cheated him. In spite that they cheated him, but they made a treaty with him. After they made a treaty with him, the Bible teaches us in different ways, it's too long to come into, that had to be kept. And when later in the history, Joshua kept that treaty,
Mm-hmm.
even when he learned that it was on a false basis that the treaty was made. And later, when the Saul and David, so there was a big epidemic which came because they broke that treaty, and our explanations, the Talmud and Rambam said that was because it was a Chilul Hashem. It was a great desecration of God's name to break the treaty. That gives us that is an unforgivable thing for Jews to do. You don't. Every other sin can be forgiven, can be atoned. We have Yom Kippur. We every day we ask for atonement. We ask for tshuva every day, 3 times a day. And Yom Kippur can atone. The death can atone. Punishments can atone. Chilul Hashem can never be atoned, not by death, not by Yom Kippur, nothing can atone Chilul Hashem, something which is a desecration of God's name. And therefore, when we do a breach of the Declaration of Independence, which was signed by all the Jewish members of that time, of the leadership of that time, the ultra-Orthodox, the ultra-communists, everybody signed it. This is a treaty which cannot be broken.
Should Israel treat its Jewish and non-Jewish citizens the same?
Yes, absolutely.
How do you think it should account for the differences religiously?
What?
How do you think that Israel should account for the differences religiously, culturally, and so on?
That doesn't mean we're a Jewish state. That means, for example, there are things like the law of return. The law of return has to do with before you come to the country. That is a special law which is made for us to be a Jewish state. But us treating Jews and non-Jews the same in the country is part not of our being democratic, it's part of our being Jewish. And as many other, but the way we act in this country, the Jewishness of this country is part of also how we treat they're not only the stranger in this country, the Arab Palestinian citizens of this country are not strangers. They are an integral part of those who live in this country. The strangers in this country are those who come as foreign workers and so on. Those are the ones who are the strangers.
The strangers being the biblical reference.
The other. Right, the other.
You're saying, when you say strangers, you're saying that as like a ger, meaning the reference. Yeah. It's a halachic reference for those who may not be familiar in the audience.
Yes.
Now that Israel already exists, what's the purpose of Zionism?
The purpose of Zionism is to strengthen the main issues of the things which I talked about, the edge of what we are challenged on today, which I believe is the internal peace and the external peace, that we secure. Israel is a country which, since our existence, we haven't had borders. Not easy to exist without knowing where are your borders. To secure that we have borders and that we have secure borders, which doesn't mean that they have to be we can dream of having very broad borders and broader borders. You can have dreams, but then you have dreams, then you have to compromise on other values, which would not be good. So I can believe that Judah and Shomron, Judea and Samaria, I believe fully that they're parts of our borders, and they should be, and Greater Israel is ours and belongs to us, and I believe that they belong to us. But I believe that in order to have peace, we need to find a solution which takes into consideration all the security aspects of the state of Israel, but that in the long run we can't have a secure Israel, a just Israel, without there also being a hope and a future for the Palestinian children, and in the long run, to live on our sword, it was a blessing giving to Esau, not to Jacob.
Is opposing Zionism inherently anti-Semitic?
Not inherently anti-Semitic. I'm a staunch Zionist. I don't think that opposing Zionism, when we make peace with Muslims, I don't expect to make peace with Zionist Muslims.
Why?
Why? Because I want the Muslims to be Muslims, and they're not going to be Zionists. I mean, you can find some Zionist Muslims, just as Muslims can find some anti-Zionist Jews. I don't want the Muslims to make peace with anti-Zionist Jews. I want them to make peace with Zionist Jews. I don't want them to make peace with Netzuri Karta or with I don't know, the Jews for whatever they called the Jews against Zionism are called. There are some
the different coalitions and groups.
Different groups in the world. That's not a deal. I want there to be peace between Islam and Judaism, so I want it to be with authentic Islam and be with authentic Judaism, which represents the vast majority of Jews. Just as I'm a staunch Zionist, and I come to the Muslim world, the whole of the Muslim world. I'm pretty sure that I'm the Jew in the world who has spoken with most Islamists in the world, nobody more than I, and they know exactly what I stand for. At the same time as they know that I want future and a hope for the Palestinians, just as I want it for the Jewish people, and that's part of my Zionism.
So I was going to ask, because it's obvious that you have a very deep compassion and sensitivity that many don't share for peace, for the peace process of Palestinians, for Gaza going on for what's happening in Gaza since the war began after October 7th. And so for those Jews, or for those people who might say, Rabbi Melchior, I agree with all of your concerns, but I don't think that there's a process as things currently go. And they oppose Zionism for those reasons. And they oppose the state of Israel for those reasons. How do you understand that perspective?
I didn't get the question.
Meaning, someone can share a lot of your concerns, but they may not share your hope or your belief that it can be resolved via the state of Israel. How do you understand, or what would you say to those people?
Listen, just as I ask them, I always challenge them to come up with something else, okay? There were 3 ways before October 7th. There were those who said that we need to find some solution and some formula of a 2-state solution for the 2 peoples living, and a peace which I think should be with the whole of the Arab and Muslim world, which wasn't possible in the past, but today is possible. And that, I think, is the good news, that we can make peace with the whole of the Arab and the whole of the Muslim world. That wasn't possible before, which is an immense thing. Besides, we can include also in that also Syria today, and Saudi Arabia, which is the most important, religiously the most important country in the Arab world, and we can have a warm peace, not a cold peace, with those countries, and with the whole of the Arab world, but including the religious leadership, can't be done only with the Muslim, and we have peace with all of the Palestinians, I believe today, and I believe it from knowledge, not from theory, right, as opposed to
And from the work you do with
all the
peace work.
commentators and all those who think. So that's one possibility. The other possibility was just to manage the situation. Right? That was what Israel was doing till October 7th. And we saw what that led to manage. You can't manage things. You manage things, it explodes in your faces. And we were warning everybody before October 7th. I'm on record the whole of the year before October 7th that this is going to explode in our faces. I knocked on doors of foreign ministers and even October 2nd and 3rd and so on during Sukkot, that we were sitting on a time bomb. Okay, those are those who will manage. So that's the second solution which you can have, and then you can have a third.
Just to clarify one thing, you're referencing the year before October 7th. You're referring to judicial reform and what was happening in the country, or specifically for
I'm talking about the situation. The judicial reform was another thing, but that's not what I'm talking about.
That's not what you felt was the ticking time bomb.
No, I'm talking about the time bomb with the situation with the Palestinians and Gaza, and the third situation which you could have is the two solutions which people are talking about today. One is from the river to the sea, which you hear in all kinds of places around the world today, which I think in depth means wiping out not only Zionism, but wiping out Jews, ethnic cleansing because you can't have from the river to the sea. It doesn't mean an utopian, we all live together forever and
it's
ever
not Rav
in
Froman's
peace
vision
and love.
of like a one-state reality where everyone's...
No, Rabbi Froman didn't support that. Rabbi Froman very much supported a two-state solution. And I heard him many times. I worked with him. But it can't be without, and this he brought into my formula of a religious can't be only coming from secular leftists, right? Or religious leftists supporting secular leftists. That it's not going to come from there. That's not going to work. It's too narrow. The tent is too narrow to solve that. So it has to include everybody. This was what also Rabbi Froman very much publicly, very much supported. But he very much supported also a two-state solution, But from the river to the sea means where those are demonstrated. It means to wipe out. It means an ethnic cleansing of Jews from here. Let the Jews either be wiped out or go back to Poland or wherever they come from, or to Morocco, or to
Norway,
yeah, whatever. And so that's what it means. Okay? Or you can have from the sea to the river, which is like Eretz Israel HaShlema, which if you read the program of Smotrich, which by far and large also is in in this government's program means from the sea to the river, which means that we cease to become we cease to be a democracy, right? That we accept that the Palestinians, Smotrich say that they should accept the principle of Eretz Yisrael Shlema or be thrown out, or what is worse than that. And that is today, those are the options we have today. Those are the options. So if somebody can come up, there are all kinds of other ideas which have come up which are not possible. And I think, and I think that I have more in-depth knowledge also, that it is feasible. Not in the time of war. This is not the time when people come together and talk about solutions. So what I'm talking about here is premature. It's premature. You asked me, so I went into it. I don't talk about this usually. That's why I don't give interviews usually. But there's a time for war and there's a time for peace. And the biggest conflicts, which are much, much deeper than ours, have been solved in peaceful solutions. Mm-hmm. And I know that both parts in depth want it. We want desperately for our children just to be able to be safe. Mm-hmm. We want it here in Israel. We want it so much. And I know that the Palestinians want that. And I'm saying across the board, that's what they want. I hear those considered extreme amongst the Palestinians saying to those who are considered even more extreme, they say, what do you want? Let's say you have a great success, more than the October 7th, and you can kill even more Israelis. So what? Does this bring happiness to any Palestinian child? It doesn't. Won't bring happiness to won't bring a future. We want happiness for the Palestinian children. And those are Hamas leaders who are saying that to the others, and they're convincing them now. It doesn't bring them anything, nothing. And just is a disgrace of God's name. It's not religious. And therefore, they are now creating a religious basis for doing something different. Mm-hmm. And they're creating the fatwas and the religious basis for doing something different. And when we here in Israel, the Jewish people, will see that, I think that will give us a lot of hope and will move the minds. And I speak to this often in smaller crowds, and it gives a lot of hope for the future. And I think that's all what we want. It's all what we want for our children. We just want to know that it's realistic and that it can happen. I also have my children and grandchildren in the front here in Gaza, in Lebanon, in Jenin, and all over. And we want this also to stop. They're endangered every day. They have their friends. They've been going to funerals also the whole time. When they've had time to go to funerals, usually they don't have time because they've been either in Sadi or Miluim during since the 7th of October. But there is a time also to say enough is enough.
So why don't Israelis and, for that larger world Jewry, see that side that you're describing? Like, for many would say that if they heard you say this, I'd imagine they'd say something to the effect of, that's not true, the Palestinians just want to kill us, they're anti-Semitic, they hate us, and that's the whole of it. And that's very clearly not how you see things. You think that that's very deeply flawed. Can you share more about why there's such a gap between that perspective?
We don't know what's going on the other side, just as they don't know what's going on our side, because they also hear on our side only the expressions of extremism from our side. They don't know that the vast majority of people here, that's not what they want. The vast majority of people here don't. They want good. They want good future for their children. That people why we're in war. People here, and rightly so, after the 7th of October, people are afraid. Afraid also they play in fear, and certain populism comes in, and that pulls us apart, also internally, also externally, and it's difficult to see anything else. We're also not shown here in the not in the social media, not in other media. We're not shown anything else. But when people see other things, then things change. I remember before Sadat came to Jerusalem, he was our biggest enemy. He was an admirer of the Nazis. And when he came, even people didn't believe. They were our chief of staff. It was a labor man, right? And Ezra Weizmann thought that he was coming in order to kill all the leadership in Israel who were assembled in the airport to receive him. But the moment he came and landed, he landed in the hearts of the Israelis. We didn't want the Egyptian land. And Menachem Begin accepted the self-determination of the Palestinians. Menachem Begin accepted self-determination of the Palestinians and gave him also peace with the Egyptians. And he just had to stand in the Knesset and say, no more war. That was it. And because that's what people here wanted. And I still have all the writings, what people were writing then, that they won't hold one day after Sadat, and he's just wanting to cheat us and so on. I still have all the writings from that time. And you see, it's held, even when the Muslim Brotherhood came to power in Egypt, when Morsi was in power in Egypt, he didn't break the peace agreement with Israel.
Should Israel be a religious state?
Israel should be a Jewish and democratic state.
But not a religious state.
What does it mean, a religious state?
Well, you tell me what you want it to mean, what you don't want it to mean.
Much more Jewish and much more democratic. And there are lots of issues. When we talk about religious, we always think about enforcing religious laws on people who don't want to keep religious laws. That's not a religious state. That's stupidity. That's making Judaism hated on people. That's not religious. We should be more caring of each other. We should, once Rabbi Mital was asked, if you become a minister in the government, would you like to be minister of religion? He said, no, I would like to be minister of health. That's much more Jewish thing. Take care that people should be healthy. That's a Jewish thing. That's a religious thing.
If you were making the case for Israel, where would you begin?
Making a case for Israel, it's a good question. I would for sure not be doing anything of what the so-called Hasbara is doing today.
What are they doing, and what would you do differently?
First of all, they're all successful, right? Like fighting anti-Semitism is all successful. 170, I know of 170 organizations, all successful. That's why anti-Semitism is going up and up. I would not do that. I would do the things which we've been talking about here. I would, like fighting anti-Semitism, I think the most efficient battle against anti-Semitism is not done by Jews. It's done by actions, by our policies. It's
By Israel's policies, you mean?
by when it comes to Israel's policies, and by anti-Semitism. When we started the religious peace, I did this on the request of my partner, Sheikh Abdullah Nimer Darwish, blessed be his memory, ala rakmu, as they say. And once I talked about anti-Semitism in television, I know the issue quite well. I got it in with my mother's milk and my father's teachings, and I know the issue very well. The history of anti-Semitism in every country, I can talk a lot about it. And I talked about it in television, and Sheikh Abdullah called me, he said, you were quite good in television today. I said, okay, Sheikh Abdullah, when you say I was quite good, it means that it wasn't something special. He said, yes, when you speak about anti-Semitism, it's always your self-interest. When you speak about against racism, when you speak about Islamophobia in the world, then you speak with passion. So he said, let's make a deal. I, Sheikh Abdullah, the founder of the Islamic movement, been in prison for terrorism, but then became the first soldier for peace. I will go to every forum, to Al Jazeera, to Al Arabiya, to every mosque. I will speak about anti-Semitism, say how much that desecrates the Quran, the word of Allah, and you will speak about Islamophobia, and you'll see how that's much more efficient. And he did this in thousands of places, and it had an effect on so many. And I did my part of the job. And this is what we need to do, and what we're now starting to do around the world. Mm-hmm. It's much more efficient. And I started a movement which unfortunately the Jewish organizations didn't want to accept, together with the late Elie Wiesel, Zichrono Livracha, and Yibadel L'Chaim Arukim, Irvin Cutler, and other non-Jewish friends. We were starting a movement to have non-Jewish, great leaders, also Muslim leaders, to lead the battle against anti-Semitism in the world. The Jewish organizations said it's our turf, and that's why it's not working.
Should all Israelis serve in the army?
All Israeli Jews, yes.
Mm-hmm. But not Israeli Muslims or Christians or Arabs?
No.
Including Haredim, within Israeli Jews as well, I should add.
I think that all Israeli Jews should serve in the army, yes.
Mm-hmm. How do you think that should be handled with the Haredi draft? Like, what do you think is the appropriate? Because a lot of what we've spoken about is you have a sort of novelty of how you try to approach issues that people in the past have clearly been unsuccessful with. I'm curious how you understand.
This is not an issue I've worked very intensely with. Mm-hmm. I think that it has to be. I think it's becoming too many slogans, too much populism in the dealing with this issue. We can't have a situation like we have today, when there are those, like one of my sons is already 40 years old. He's been in the army since the 7th of October.
Wow.
And not 200 days, not 300 days, but 444 days, 5 children. You can't have a situation risking his life, and the same with others in many families, those who have given their lives. You can't have a society where that is their situation. And so many of their friends are being killed, and others not serving. It just can't be. It's gone over all the red lines now. And especially when the army says that it can take in the Haredi population, all of them, during the coming year. On the other hand, I know that it's not going to happen. So that's the situation.
Can questioning the actions of Israel's government and army, even in the context of this war, can that be considered a valid form of love and patriotism?
Questioning the actions?
Yeah, like if people are questioning the actions of the Israeli government and the army, can that type of questioning be considered a form of love and patriotism?
I can't think that not questioning. Everything is in Judaism. We question God. We talk to God. We question God. We ask questions of God. How many times have I not been sitting now with Shiva visits with families now of soldiers who have fallen, who have not asked me deep theological questions. When we can question God, shouldn't we be able to question the army or government? Or so we can question. Of course we can question. And I think the bright soldiers and bright citizens are questioning. The question is always, do you question out of love and care, or do you question out of in order to break down? That's always the question. Where do you come from when you question? How do you formulate your question? That's the issue. You can have the same question and come from a place of hating. That's not.
What do you think is the most legitimate criticism leveled against Israel today?
I don't know.
What do you think? Or what would you say? It doesn't have to, you don't have to totally agree with it, but something that you hear that people criticize Israel for that you think, maybe I don't entirely agree with that, but I think that's a...
I think I've said a lot during these minutes, and I think that a long time ago we should have ended the war and found a way that this should be the last war. And we need to, just as you need to have war, you need to find peace. And that's...
Do you think the state of Israel is part of the final redemption?
It's a possibility. If we do the right things.
A conditional.
What?
You think it's a conditional?
It's conditional, yes.
What do you think it's conditional on?
It's conditional on what we do. If we will make this a place where Mashiach will want to be.
Are we doing that?
Depends on my first answer to your first question. Depends on which way we go.
Which way are we going? That was kind of what I had asked earlier, and I'm still curious. Because until now, we've had 15 months to head in a certain direction. Do you feel that things are looking on the up, on the down? Do you think this is we're creating the type of world that Mashiach would want to live in, as you said?
I started off saying that we were on a crossroad. and we have important decisions to make, and we can make the right decisions.
But you don't think the last
we
15
should,
months have been part of that decision making?
it's been part of it, but we're in the midst of a process. It's difficult to see when you're in the midst of the process and you're hurting and you're pain and you have tears. So it's difficult to see often where you want to go, where you should go. It's very difficult, and therefore, I believe that I'm not a commentator. Right?
Understood.
It's not my job in life to be commentators. There are those who pay to do that. Not my job. My job is to do, in all modesty, to do what I can to move things in the right direction. Well, that's what I have to do. And in the days or months or years, the Almighty will give me, together with lots of good friends I have, who are working together with me on making this a better place and making really a Kiddush Hashem here internally, so that also Jews around the world will look to Israel and say, wow, they can have a Judaism, which is a Judaism which is inclusive towards everybody, which can include also humanity in Judaism. We have a wonderful educational system called Meitarim, which is, it's playing on strings. If you play on one Jewish string, it's really not very beautiful music you can give. But if you play on all the strings and all the music instruments, you can get wonderful, beautiful music. And why not play on all the strings of the Jewish people we have here? And Aruch HaShulchan says that in his introduction to writing all the laws of Judaism. He writes about this, and this is what we do. This is what we're trying to do, and we're growing and growing. We're the fastest growing educational institutions in the states of Israel today, and people don't know about it. And I think that people around the Jewish world will be inspired that you can combine knowing what's going on in the world and Jewish people together with together with the humanism and intensive Jewish learning of sources and I was just yesterday in Ra'anana, where we had something called a hackathon, if you know what that is, about prayer. How do you give new meaning for teenagers in prayer? It's not easy these days. And I said, it's not a new question, even when the Mishnah says that if you make your prayer kavua, you do something the same time the whole day, then the prayer can't be tachanun. So that was the first call for a hackathon by the Mishnah. It can't be something which is real and genuine if it's something which is fixed. Right? So that's a call for hackathon. And in the Talmud Yerushalmi, it talks about all the great sages who were thinking about counting chickens while they were praying because they couldn't concentrate on their prayers. But also today, it's difficult always to concentrate on. So, because things are going on in our world, important things, and we discuss this in our schools and in our Bet Midrash, in our learning houses. How does this affect us? Which way are we going now in the states of Israel internally? And I saw how the kids and their teachers and their principals were sitting, thinking creatively. It's just so inspiring. And this is the same way as we can think also creatively. How can we work with our neighbors, so that we can have a future together. Because in the long run, this is our neighborhood. Okay, we're not in a neighborhood of I don't know where there's peaceful neighborhoods today in the world. The whole world, in that sense, is becoming Jewish. And I don't know where. Everywhere the people go to bed and they don't know what they're waking up for the next day. So but we can be a model here. This beautiful city, Jerusalem, it can be a model for the whole world. We can work it out together here, and we can be a sanctification of God's name here in this holy city. Then it can be for the whole world. Why shouldn't they be able to work it out in Baghdad and in Paris and in Nairobi and all over the world if we can do it here? And therefore I think it's possible. It is possible. I sincerely believe that, and we are solving so many issues around this country. We have nearly 80 mediation centers all over the country of Israel. How many people know that in the world? Mediation centers where people come and solve all their problems all over this country. We have 30 in the Arab cities and 16 in the mixed Arab Jewish cities, where the extremists come together, not the difficult, not the easy people who always the peacemakers, but the extremists come together and they solve the problems before they blow up and become and all kinds of incidents happening. So much good is happening in this country of so many good people who I believe are 95 or 98% of our citizens here.
Is Messianism helpful or harmful to Israel?
Again, it depends what you mean by messianism. If you by messianism mean that we should be conquering and crushing everybody else, then it's harmful. If by messianism you mean the fulfillment of the dreams of the prophets for messianism, then it's then there's nothing more beautiful and helpful.
Do you think peace between Israelis and Palestinians will happen within your lifetime?
Well, if God will let me live a few months more, then I'm, with God's help, if we do the right things, then there's no reason why
You think in a
not.
few months there can be peace?
We can go to a path. It's not going to happen overnight. But we can go down that path towards peace, yes.
Can you say more about what that path looks like? I know we spoke before about the war.
I think that I described that quite intensely before, but we need first to come to the recognition that we want to live in peace, and that we want a peace, we want security, and then already we're talking about, then we're already starting the right way. We want peace with the whole of the Arab world, with the Muslim world, and then we can open our eyes and we can see suddenly that they're ready to be our partners in this.
Moving on that path that you're describing, given that, let me ask it this way. I think it's pretty fair to say, at least from the public view, the outsiders, at least for myself, an outsider looking in, the current Israeli government does not see the next steps, or does not at least express the next steps as you're describing them. How do you see that factoring into what's going to happen in the next few months or in the next few years?
Well, I think that we need major factors and players also in the present government also to be part of that process.
How can we get them on board? Or are they already on board?
Well, we talk to people also inside the government, to different parties, and to religious leaders, also inside
Mm-hmm.
inside the government. You can't have. It's not going to be. Uh, it's not going to be a peace which is only like the peace of Oslo. That won't do it.
Mm-hmm. Where do you identify on Israel's political and religious spectrum? And do you have any friends on the quote unquote other side?
First of all, I don't know if I have any friends at all. Where I am on the
Yeah,
spectrum,
politically and religiously, and then do you have friends on the other side?
I don't know. I don't like all these definitions. I like to break down
Mm-hmm.
all these definitions. I can't take them. So I'm not.
You can use your own
Others,
labels or definitions.
others can label and define me. I don't.
Uh-huh.
I don't deal with that. It doesn't interest me to be put in a box
Mm-hmm.
or to be put labels on. Some others have tried, and
Mm-hmm.
they've always failed.
I'll just insert this quote from Rav Froman that I love, where he says, "I can't be right wing or left wing because you need two wings to fly." So normally I'm a stickler for this question, but I'll let you go. Our last question: do you have more hope or fear for Israel and the Jewish people?
I have much more hope.
Can you say more about
I
that?
learned from my father, Zichrono Livracha, that even for those who are pessimistic, who don't see the lights in the end of the tunnel, it's not because the light is not there, it's because the tunnel is not straightforward. It goes around corners, and we human beings don't always see around corners. I think I see a little more because I know much more what's going on our side, and I know even much, much more what's going on the other side. I know the Israeli society in and out. I've seen both from being in government, in the cabinet, even the security cabinet, and I've seen from civil society as a rabbi, and I know the right wing and the left wing and the center and above and between and so on. I know what's going on, and therefore I can only go to the future with great hope. At the same time, being fully realistic and seeing what's going on. And I don't say that there's not dangers on the way. Absolutely, and I see those dangers, and I understand people who are fearful and even despair. But Yush, despair is not a very recommended medicine.
When you say you know what's going on both sides, I want to just clarify what that means. Meaning, you know what's going on the Israeli side, being the efforts being made to make peace, the way that you said most Israelis actually do want peace. What do you mean when you say that? And then also on the Palestinian side, what are the things that you know that are going on? I know that you mentioned earlier before our interview that there's a lot of things you can't share given your work.
Yes.
So I'm curious from what you can share, what you would say.
So you should end this by being more curious.
That's actually the motto for 1840. Stay curious. So,
okay.
Well, I'll tell everyone to hold their curiosity. Well, Rabbi Melchior, thank you so much for answering our 18 questions. How was this for you?
It's good that it's finished.